Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Dropping Down from the Rafters podcast here on Toned In Entertainment. Oh my goodness, I think this is long overdue because here on the channel here in November 2023, once again, we have the young professor, Matt Graifer. How you doing, Matt?
Tony, I'm doing good, buddy. It's been a long time. It's been a while.
I kind of look back today. I actually went back and rewatched our first interview. It was actually in January of 2020. No, sorry,
wow.
2019. I'm sorry.
No, there's no. Wait, it had to be 20.
No, 2020. It is.
It had to be 20.
Yeah,
I wasn't that active in 2019. That's why.
Yeah, you're right.
2019 was right when I kind of started breaking out to other promotions. Actually, 2019 was the first time I worked outside of my home promotion. So yeah, 2020. But still, that is some time ago.
Correct, because yeah, it would be 4 years this January, and our first interview was at Ignite Wrestling before everything got shut down. That's why it's a blur, because everything got shut down. Yeah,
yeah, that's 2 months before the world ended. At least for a lot of us as performers, I remember it well. I remember it very well.
Yeah, and it was funny when I first start setting up those interviews. It was my first Ignite Wrestling show that I ever attended. And I remember
that's why you interviewed a scrub like me.
No, not at all. What it was is I set up a few interviews. I had talked to Kim. I hadn't even met her officially until I went to the show that day, only through Facebook Messenger. But one of the people on that, I sent her a list of people I wanted to interview, and she said one of the people that you need to interview is the young professor.
Wow, that was my first show with her too. It was the first time I met her, so. That's high praise from afar at that point. That's good.
It definitely is. Let's get a couple guys in here. We got Mosh Pit Messiah saying, "Oh yeah, brother, always welcome. You always welcome the Mosh Pit." And of course, King Atlas making his ways on the independent scene, wrestling scene right now. Can I speak? Of course you can. It's Toned In Entertainment. You're allowed to speak here.
It's a podcast. It wouldn't be much if no one spoke. And
definitely, it'd just be me and Matt.
Welcome, yeah.
Yes, just me and Matt sitting here for an hour, just looking at each other's Funko Pops in the background.
So I have an interesting collection behind me. Like you're kind of looking at the lower levels down here, and this is a weird thing about me. But if you look at these kind of top two shelves, like you see, I've got a lot of wrestlers here, down here, and over here. All of the people in these rings and on these shelves are all wrestlers that I have worked with. That have action figures. And so I've got a list of like others that I haven't gotten yet. In fact, now more of them are coming out. I saw like Top Dollar's figure is coming out. I worked with him years ago when he was Frank. So I've got to get a Frank figure. Like anybody that I've worked with that, has ranked enough to have an action figure, or in this case, I've got NASCAR drivers. I work NASCAR. So all the drivers I work with, I have all their little mini cars. So these are all baseball players that I've announced for, professional baseball players. I've got like Johnny Damon in there and just some other huge names in different sports that I've gotten to work with, that I've been blessed to work with in my career. This is kind of like my kind of wall of fame, my accomplishments. There's not many trophies for what I do, but for this, it's a visual, physical reminder of the cool things I've gotten to do. So that's what people are looking at here.
I love that. Wow, me and you are on the same wavelength, because I've actually started doing the same thing. And while you definitely have more figures on than I do, I'm working on it. But I do have my red velvet one, and I'm waiting for my.
She's in there. I think on this shelf right here.
Okay, and I'm also waiting for the Roxy or Roxanne Perez in WWE now figure to come out, because
I ordered mine an hour ago.
Oh, for real?
Yeah,
okay,
literally an hour ago, because I haven't met her. I called one of her matches in post production, but I did do commentary for her once upon a time, so it counts. It counts.
It does count. Yeah, I was lucky enough. I know I did grab an interview with her at one of the shows down here, and I was like, this girl's going to be like for sure, like signed and hard to get. WWE doesn't allow many people to come into their world and do interviews on a regular basis. You have to, you have to be the big dogs like a Chris Van Vliet to get the WWE guys.
He's nailing down some really good interviews lately.
Hogan, Flair, RVD. Yeah. I mean,
I want to watch his Mike Chioda interview. I saw him like post a clip from that today. Chioda is a guy, you forget how long he was a referee for 35 years. So he's been in the ring for some of the biggest matches ever. And I just think that's cool. It's just a unique, as someone that's also an ancillary character in the world of professional wrestling. I think that's unique. I think it's interesting to kind of hear from those guys because it's a perspective that is not often explored.
Now, obviously, when I met you, you were doing a lot of wrestling, and now, of course, you've made a transition. Now you're doing big things with the Savannah Bananas right now. So for those that don't know, I went through and, we talked a couple of weeks ago. We were at Mayhem on Mills and we ran into each other. And that's what I love about going to the shows, because as much as you can talk to one another online, and we even talked one time like, hey, let's do another podcast together. But once you see somebody in person, it makes it like a really personal connection to be like, let's do this thing. And we set this up. But, you talked about the Savannah Bananas there. And since then, I've been watching the clips and oh my God, it is outrageous. It's what, okay, if you're not a baseball fan, like I grew up watching Barry Bonds and Jose Canseco and Ken Griffey, and I had a absolute love, stats, everything. I was a nerd for baseball. But do I watch baseball anymore? Absolutely not. But Savannah Bananas, that's a whole nother world. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Savannah Bananas?
So our whole tagline is we make baseball fun. And that's really what it is. It is a 360-degree, wildly immersive entertainment experience. Literally for fans that are there live, which I think is where we are at our best, is when you're at our live show. If you're there live, literally from the minute you get out of your car and you jump in line till the minute you go back to your car, we are doing something to entertain you. I mean, we have a DJ out in our plaza out in front for people that are in line. And I come out at 4:30 and start doing a pre-show, because we have a show before the show that happens, so that people who are standing out there in the heat and that are out there just kind of waiting and getting all amped up and jonesing to get inside, we do stuff to entertain them. We open the gates. It's like a mad rush. It's like that scene in The Lion King. It's terrifying, but it's every single night because it's sold out. Fans are stacked as far as the eye can see, usually wrapped around the stadiums. We have like a full hour and change of all pregame antics, just building all the anticipation. And then it's a 2-hour baseball circus that ensues from there. We've taken the game of baseball and we've turned it on its head. We have created 11 new rules that have differentiate us from baseball. So technically we play a game called Banana Ball, which has some really wild rules that are meant to be more fun. Anything that people complain about when it comes to baseball that is boring or slow, we've removed all of that, and we have either just taken it out or we've replaced it with something that we think is a little cooler and a little more fun. And the result is this wild, unbelievable show that we call, and I think is rightfully so, as someone who's hosted enough events, who's seen enough events, it is the greatest show in sports.
It is crazy. Like I actually was watching a bunch of clips, and I love this. Savannah Bananas have the YouTube shorts on there, so you can really if you just want to catch up real quick and see what it's about, that's a great place to start for anybody that's watching. That's a great place to start. And then you can get into like the documentaries and like the 20-minute videos and stuff like that. But like I saw guys doing the Thriller dance. I saw guys on stilts. I saw a pitcher jumping up on a trampoline in order to, it feels like it's the Harlem Globetrotters, the pro wrestling and baseball, like kind of like.
That's a great, yeah.
That's the way I looked at it. Yeah,
it's sports entertainment. I mean, and that's the term given to professional wrestling. I know some old school purists don't like that term, but I think that is the most appropriate term for wrestling. It is sports entertainment, and that's what we are as well. But it's a very different flavor and brand of it. The biggest difference, I'd say, between what we do versus what professional wrestling and what the Harlem Globetrotters do is it's a real game. And a lot of people don't realize that. Like we stage a lot of the shenanigans and we script and write a lot of what happens during the show. But the gameplay, what's happening in those innings, it's real. Like, and in fact, last year, I don't know what more can prove it. It went all the way down to the very last game of the entire season out of the 87 games that we played. But the Party Animals, our rival team, they won and they beat the Bananas for the entire season. Now, we don't have a championship or anything that yet, but the Party Animals defeated the Bananas. And so that was the result last year. So that, like, you go to watch the Globetrotters, you know who's going to win. It's a fixed outcome. Whereas with us, anything goes. And both teams are really trying to win, but just having fun the whole time.
Yeah, another great way I feel like I could sum it up is if you ever watched the first Naked Gun movie and you see Frank Drebin out there as the umpire and he's trying to delay, of course, like the terrorists from doing stuff, but he has to
Right.
do all these wild shenanigans with like, and he's dancing because the umpires dance too. And
Yep.
it's
Yep.
just, it was like craziness. And I know you had mentioned to me that they're coming down Miami. So I looked it up. It's October next year
Yeah, it's our
that they'll
very
be down here in
last
Miami.
game, the very
Yes,
last,
correct.
and then from there, we are taking a cruise out 2 days later, and that we are all the entertainment for Banana Land at sea. So yeah, we end our year in Miami at a major league stadium, and then a 4 or 5 day cruise from Monday to Friday. We're out on the ocean with some of our biggest banana maniacs, brother. That's who we'll be out there with.
Yeah, because I think some shows in February in Tampa, but then it kind of travels all around the country. You kind of have like these 3 game stints. It looks like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday in like different cities around the country.
Yeah, we're barnstormers, man. I mean, our home base is in Savannah, Georgia, and we have a stadium there, which now is the smallest stadium that we will be playing in, probably for the foreseeable future, because this thing is just blown up so much. But yeah, we are going all across the country. We did the same thing this past year. Like I said, 87 games in 21 states, which was a wild traveling experience for me. The first time, like traveling so extensively and getting to perform in so many unbelievable places. But yeah, we're doing more of that this year from literally from coast to coast, all up and down the East Coast and then all the way out to California. We've got 2 weekends back to back in Fresno and Sacramento at the early part of the summer. So it's going to be wild.
So you go to every single game then?
Last year, I missed 1 game, and it was for a wrestling event, and that was it. I went to 80. I performed to 86 out of 87 games. But this year, I don't plan on missing any of them. This is my full-time job now, so that's where I'm going to be, and it's a good place to be, I would say.
Yeah, Mosh Pit Messiah says interesting concept, dude. You have to go and watch the videos. It's like it blew my mind when I started watching these videos, like how crazy it is, and the fans. They're rabid, like rabid, not in a bad way, but like
no, you're right. That's a good word.
Oh, it is okay, but they're hungry. Like it brings me back to that '90s feel of like putting everything beside, away and enjoying where you're at for those couple hours of entertainment.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, it is sensory overload. Like we've always like, so you know how like in baseball when the batter steps in the box and he's there and the music all goes quiet and only in between pitches maybe you'll get a sound effect. Or we don't do that. We're playing music and clips and stuff and scripting things and then other things are happening. It's like a 10-ring circus. So there's so much to look at. It's one of my favorite things is especially someone that just moved out of education. I love the fact that when you are at our games, you don't see people on their phones. If you do, they're and then they're in it because it all moves so fast that if you look away for even a moment, you're going to miss something. I mean, literally, I know what we're doing. And every night our social media team on one of the different platforms that we're putting out different content on, they'll post something from that game and I'll go, when did we do that? Like I didn't even see that happen. There was a contortionist at a game that we had. I didn't even see this person and I didn't see them. When was I'm there? Like, how did that happen? So it's a wild experience that you have to be really locked in on because you will miss something.
Now, I know before you signed on with the Savannah Bananas, obviously you were doing a lot of wrestling stuff. And you were doing the conventions like River City Wrestling Con. You were doing panels. I know for a fact you actually emceed a CrossFit competition. That I do know that for a fact.
Yeah, thanks for that again. Yeah,
that was a job I passed.
They asked me back a few times and it didn't work out, but yeah.
Right, yeah, because I've gone to do their stuff when it's like we were taking turns and getting the calls for the competition. So we've each done the same CrossFit event. But you were doing a lot of wrestling stuff. So to make that transition into this crazy world of banana ball, was this something that you foresee yourself doing? And 2, like, are you happy with the decision that this came along and that maybe the wrestling thing, maybe didn't blow up as quickly as this opportunity did?
It's hard to say because I mean I'm thrilled with my decision and I'm so happy this came along. But literally 5 years ago, this as it is now did not exist. The bananas existed, but the scope, the scale of what we're doing, it was on not very many people's radar. And certainly, I don't. Our owner even says it. I don't think his vision of what this is now matches up, with what he was thinking 5 years ago. Because I mean, I don't know that there's another comparison that you can make for the kind of meteoric rise and the growth that we're having, as an organization and what this thing has become. So it just wasn't there. But I'm super happy with everything that has happened in my wrestling career, and I'm not out of it. It's just a matter of what makes sense and when. Like I will be hosting the establishment wrestling event this coming Sunday in Orlando. So I do still have, a toe in the water. I still have plenty of friends. I mean, I literally got my start in professional wrestling. And if I'm being perfectly honest, the sport that I followed the most, that I was most passionate about since I was 11 years old is professional wrestling. I loved it. And it was there that I cut my teeth. It's where I learned really so much of what I use in so many of my other hosting experiences. I've been blessed to kind of have a very weird strung together career where things have kind of been able to build on each other to kind of create this complete package that helps me now in what I do. But pro wrestling was a big part of that because I worked at Go Wrestle for a long time. I was their like go-to ring announcer. And when I first started, they were a weekly promotion. So for somebody like me that was just starting out in 2018, I got to work every single week. I was getting repetitions every week as an announcer, whereas, announcer jobs are hard to come by, just generally speaking. You think about a wrestling show, if you have 5 or 6 matches, you probably have a tag team match in there somewhere. You maybe have a couple managers, but how many personnel are on there? If you're a wrestler, you've got a 1 in 12, 1 in 15 shot of getting on that show. If you're an announcer, there's one person. So it's really hard to break in there and even harder to get those repetitions because most promotions run monthly, semi-monthly, quarterly, biannually, annually, and you have to string things together. I was fortunate that whole first year I got rep after rep after rep after rep. And then in year 2, I started adding additional promotions and other experiences in other sports where I was able to kind of become a more well-rounded performer. And when it comes to being a full-time ring announcer, which is, if you asked me 5 years ago what I would like to do, I don't know that I believed that I would, but I thought there was a chance. You really only have 2 places that you could possibly go. And even 5 years ago, you didn't have 2 places. You had 1 place where you could be a full-time performer in what I do. And that was the WWE and now AEW. But again, like there's only a couple people there. They don't have a big, bench and they don't need it. And so for this to come along and value what I do, because that's the interesting thing. They weren't looking for me, the Savannah Bananas. My story of how I joined up with them is kind of interesting, but they liked that I was a pro wrestling ring announcer. They liked that I had that ability to kind of be part of a more theatrical production, a more theatrical show. And that was evident very quickly because I could roll with the punches. I could respond and react to things genuinely because I was used to that because there's a lot of improvisation and things that happen when you're performing in a pro wrestling show. So it's all very serendipitous. The wrestling got me to where I am, but I love where I am and I love where I've been. I love the entire experience and I'm just happy I get to do what I'm doing full time now.
Now, what's crazy is I met you and you were doing obviously ring announcing and you were doing commentary and then you were even promoting some shows as well or putting together some shows as well. So I thought I'd just bring up the flyer and talk about maybe some of the people that were on that show and maybe how far that they've come since 2021. So I'm going to pull up the flyer real quick. It's probably going to cover some of our faces because I'm not a professional like that. But like I was looking at the flyer today, and obviously I did some interviews at that show, and I'm looking at, Janiyah Kai and Layla Gray that have really just really made a name for themselves. And Killer Kate, who's now BK Rhythm on women of wrestling.
Yeah.
And, you know, not to take away from anybody from the Culture Inc. to the main event and everybody else, T Gaines that's on the flyer.
Yeah, they're right there with Booker T. So they are all over things with him, and he's talking about them on his podcast. Sky Blue, people don't realize she wasn't on the poster, but Sky Blue, she used to date one of the wrestlers that was on that show, but she was there. She was on that show. She was part of the program. So Sky Blue was there. You've got the main event, and they're House of Glory champions. You know, they had some pretty legendary clashes with some top tier tag teams in the Northeast.
The Briscoes, even they were
it was, you know, that show was it was an opportunity show. We were, you know, I was working for a promotion at the time, and we had that building for the entire day, and we had it booked out from like 12 noon until
10 a.m. dude. The show was
2
at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
10 a.m. It started on a Friday.
Originally, it was supposed to be noon until.
Okay.
But we had the building the whole day.
Right.
And just in our, you know, I was kind of in the inner circle of writing and promoting, and we talked about doing like a showcase show. And that's what I decided to call it. Like, I was like, let's make this a showcase of up and coming performers, because it was in Tampa during WrestleMania weekend when WrestleMania was in town. So all the performers from it's like the annual convention where everyone is. And so all the eyes and all the talent are in one place. You don't have to worry about flights. You don't have to worry about this, that. Everyone is there. And so we didn't have additional budget for that show, but what we did have was a time slot. And I said, I will take this on. And I said, and if we can generate enough interest and we can put something together, and we'll call it a showcase show, because a lot of those, you know, Layla Gray, she, between the time I announced her and when that show was, in between there was when she had her first AEW Dark match.
Correct.
I actually called her very first match down in Miami with you.
We were at that show. We were at that show. Yeah.
And I remember Styx and I were on commentary, and she came out, and I'm not often at a loss for words when it comes to what I do, but she came out and just did her entrance. She hadn't even locked up, nothing yet. And I looked at him and I went, this girl gets it. Like, she's a star. I knew it then. I knew it the minute I saw it. I was like, she understands the performance end of it, you know. And even then, she was a little green as a performer. Then it was her first match. Right. To see where I knew those skills would come, and of course they have. She's gotten such world-class training all over the place with Al Snow and all across the country. So many of those guys and girls that I had early connections with, because I was on the come up and they were on the come up. So many of those people have gone on to do some amazing things. And I you know, that's one of the hardest I've ever worked for any show, was I actually got enough sponsors to get the talent all paid. You know, it wasn't like a big payday, but they all got paid something, and more than they had hoped for. And they were promised nothing. It was like, look, we're betting on ourselves. We're going to do this. If you want to do it, great, but I'm going to work my ass off to get you paid and get you as much recognition. And you know, I know they say, what's the word I'm looking for? Exposure. Like, people are like, exposure's not, like, I think exposure is real. You just have to leverage yourself and what you're doing properly. So I will do that for you. And all of them came on board. They all wanted to work Mania weekend. I think that's part of it too. And we put together a show that was like 2 hours on the nose. We finished on time. I thought it was the most cohesive, well put together, well written, like match times show of the day. And that's not shading anybody else, but I was very much in control of that show. I was like, this match is this long. We made it so that we didn't step on anyone else's toes. We didn't get anyone else's way. We just wanted a really excellent, unique showcase show, school themed with the professor thing. We even had that schoolyard scramble match, which I loved. I thought that was amazing. And it was just fun. I have really fond memories of it, but definitely not in a big rush to do it again, because holy smokes, it was a lot of work.
I remember being backstage at that show, and obviously I sponsored that show. I helped sponsor that show, right, and wanted to help you out because I knew what you were trying to accomplish. So I've only sponsored 2 things, I think, so far, and I'm doing my 3rd one. I'm doing a charity thing with Logan Cruz and Wheezy T and the Cheese and all these guys over in Tampa. Holiday one.
Hope for the holidays, right?
Yeah, it's a Hope for the holidays. Yeah. So
show.
Yeah, so I'm sponsoring that show as well too. We're a Tree Topper sponsor because I love doing something for kids and Christmas, and I think it's so important. And so for me, like, that was important to sponsor. But I wanted to sponsor your show because I knew how hard you were working to get this off the ground, and I knew that what the situation was behind the scene. And I do remember being backstage, and I was obviously very busy that day doing interviews. And I remember you had everything written down. You said by times and stuff like that. And I remember taking a picture of it because I was trying to see, I was trying to set up my interviews because I had interviews
with time it out based on where people were and when they were and when
right, because a lot of people were leaving to go to other places and other shows, and I know Layla Gray I set up for that day, and Killer Kate, and several other people that day, and I just spilled my water, but it's okay. But I had several other people set up for that day, and I remember you saying, "Please don't post it." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to post it." Don't worry. It's for my notes. It's for my research. But yeah, no, it was definitely a good time. So that's just I know you love doing the announcing and the commentary and stuff, but doing promoting stuff is not something that you miss. It seems like.
No, but you know what? I'm glad I had those experiences because now, I wrote that show. I booked that show. I mean, I gave them some creative control over some of the outcomes. We talked about certain elements that we definitely wanted or definitely didn't want. But that, like, I do that now. I write parts of our script for the Savannah Bananas. I'm the entertainment, the casting director. So all of our cast members that are non-baseball players that are characters in the show, I recruit them, I oversee them, I work with them, I let them know where they need to be, when, how, which is very similar to what I did for that show. I just don't have to worry about everything. I don't have to worry about money. I don't have to worry, I just have to kind of control my part of it. But getting that experience in sports, in live entertainment, that was invaluable. And it was, I could have made that anything I wanted. And Lord knows I've worked enough shows where I've seen people make it whatever they want, and it's not always good. But I really wanted a lot of organization and it to be a really well-run thing and make every single person that took a chance to be on it with me to feel appreciated and feel valued. And I remember I got stickers made for all of them with the show poster and gave everybody a handwritten thank you card and just, really followed up to make sure everybody was feeling good when it was all said and done. And so, again, I don't think I'd want to rush right back into doing it again, but I did have a lot of fun. It was a good experience.
Great learning experience, definitely. Now, speaking of experiences, let's talk about the convention at River City Wrestling Con, where you definitely hosted not just like wrestling panels, but you got to host some like absolute legends in the ring. And just tell me a little bit about just how thrilled you were with, I believe it was Kane and was it Thunder Rosa as well too that you had up there? Because I remember I had an interview with her and you're like, "Tony, I'm so sorry." You like, I know you were doing it.
I'm like, I gotta go now.
You're like, "I'm so sorry. I know. And I'm like, you're like, but I gotta bring her up on the panel. But you did have some big guests, and trust me, I understand conventions are a whole different animal, and you gotta be respectful of everybody's time there. But let's talk about some of just the cool experiences of just having like I guess heroes maybe of yours that maybe you had a chance to actually do a panel with.
Yeah, I'm super blessed. I mean, and even some of those opportunities I thought came earlier than what I maybe like deserved for based on where I was at the time. But I think I performed well enough that it was like, oh, well, this is why we have you doing this. I was maybe a year and a half into working in wrestling when I had the chance to be a host for the first River City Wrestling Con, and I took it and ran with it. I got the first person I got to interview that day was Jake the Snake Roberts, and like immediately following that was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and later on we had Tully Blanchard and Magnum TA. And talking about their I Quit match from way back, the cage match. And gosh, we had, I've done all of the Four Horsemen at some point, except for Rick. Rick is the only guy I haven't met or worked with, but I've worked with all the other horsemen and almost all the iterations of them. And that was just the first one. But then the second year, we got into Kane, which that for me was beyond huge because I'm a huge Undertaker fan. And so anything that was about I got into wrestling because of the Undertaker. I didn't even have cable yet because we were poor and we didn't get it. Like my parents dangled the carrot. They said, if you make like high honor roll, like all year, we will get cable. So I didn't get cable till I was in like the end of my 5th grade year. I was like 11 years old. So I was only going off of stories of one of my buddies at the time. And he was telling me about the Undertaker and the Boiler Room Brawl. And I was like, what is this? So I was very just entrenched in learning about that character. And of course, when I started watching, he's one of the top characters on TV. And then Kane comes in, and you've got Mick Foley, and you've got all these other things around him. And I've gotten to work with Mick. I've gotten to work with Kane. I watched the night when Mick Foley lost, like him and Kane lost the tag team titles to the New Age Outlaws. Well, I got to work with them, all of them, and the New Age Outlaws. And I was at that, my first ever live show I went to at like 12 years old at the Continental Airlines Arena in the Meadowlands in New Jersey. I was up in the nosebleeds watching these guys, and now I'm inside a wrestling ring hanging out and talking to them. And it was a dream come true. And I don't think you would have maybe known that from me as I'm performing, which is important because you act like you've been there, be a professional first, but I'm always a fan, and I'm a fan of all these people that I've gotten to work with. And so I'm just grateful to have had these experiences and to make these guys look good now that they're no longer active in the ring, and just highlight some interesting things about their career. And I always tried to ask questions that were not cookie cutter, kind of the same as what everyone else does. I always really delved into my research and homework to kind of ask interesting things. And I think the results show. If you go back and look at any of those interviews that are on River City Wrestling Con on their YouTube page, there's some really, really good stuff. I had a lot of good back and forth with Kane over Pete Rose and that relationship, and even his English degree, because Kane has an English literature degree, and we talked about that. Give it to a professor to talk about that, but we talked about that and how he was able to kind of take what he learned in English lit and use that as a performer in professional wrestling.
Yeah, I know from my experience of doing interviews, and gosh, I've hit the 300 mark now with interviews on the channel.
That's pretty good. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. And I do know how much the performers do appreciate, us not asking the cookie cutter questions so much. I get thanked quite often for not asking ABC. And I often tell a lot of people that are like, hey, I want to do an interview. I'm like, give me like next show. Like, give me some time, because otherwise you're going to get, who's your favorite wrestler? What's your fit? If I don't have time to do at least a little bit of research, and I'm not going to give away all your my secrets, just like you're not going to give away all your secrets in your preparation, because we all have our things that we do. But it's just like, I know, coming from my perspective, how much they do appreciate, them not just asking those same questions. Yeah.
And they could be doing any number of things with their time, and they're using it to sit and talk with you. I think you owe it to somebody if they're volunteering their time. Time, I think, is the most precious asset that you have. Use it wisely, use it properly. Ask some informed questions. You don't want it to be like, if you remember the old SNL skits, like the Chris Farley show, when he had like Paul McCartney goes, remember that time we were with the Beatles? That's awesome. That's a terrible interview. You don't want to be that guy. You want something that moves, that is interesting, not just for the two of you there, but for anybody that's watching or listening to it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at that first River City Wrestling Con as well too, and I have to tell you, like, I only had like 2 interviews set up. Like, I wasn't even approved for media credentials at the show at that point, because I only done, I think, like 2 interviews on the channel at the time. But Nick was nice enough to be like, "Oh, well, I liked your style. You could come as a guest, as a not a guest, but like somebody that purchases tickets." Right. Which I did, and if anybody wants to,
for your ticket.
Yeah, you're welcome to come. And the second year I actually did get the media credentials, but I remember that first one, and I did interview Jake the Snake at the show. And I remember walking up to him, and honestly, I was trembling, because I was like, what if he says no? Like, it's kind of like a childhood hero of mine telling you no. Like, but he was super cool. We did an interview. He talked about the Peanut Butter Falcon, which is, I don't know if you've seen the movie. It is.
I watched it once. I think I fell asleep, which is,
I'm
tired. I need to go back and watch it, but I watched parts of it. It was good.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the best movies I've seen in a long time, to be perfect. He has a small role in it, but it's just about, helping this mentally challenged kid that wants to become a professional wrestler. And Jake beats the crap out of the kid. He talked about how bad he felt beating him up in the ring and stuff. But yeah, that was just an amazing experience out there. Go back and watch a Peanut Butter Falcon. Definitely. It's worth your time.
I gotta go. I gotta re-up on it.
Now, what would you say a young professor would say to the young professor now in 2023? Like, what about maybe your journey now, your professional journey.
I don't know, which stage of my life are we talking about? Are we talking when I was the young professor already just starting out, or are we talking before I had any clue? Because I started late, I started when I was like 31 in sports, something
Let's
like
say
that. Yeah.
let's say a young, just like I was thinking about doing this for a long time before I actually did it, right? So maybe before you did this, the one that had this thought in his head about doing this, what would you say to him?
Gosh, I don't know, because I'll be honest with you. And I think it's something that's important for people to hear. I didn't know what I wanted to do, like, with my life, until maybe 2 years ago. And I'm 37 now. I'm not that young of a young professor anymore, and I don't think I figured it out till I was 35 years old. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I just wasn't paying attention to things that were in front of me all along. Like, I just finished, writing my book that's going to be coming out next year. It's got to go through editing. I've still got a lot of work to do between now. I'm really hoping for June is when I'm hoping to get that thing out there. But, I'm writing about how to be a host just in general. But in doing so, I'm kind of telling my story of how that all happened. Because I started as a live trivia host in bars and restaurants, usually 2-3 nights a week, just, for extra money. I got laid off from my job. I lost my college professor job. I've got 4 kids. I've got a ton of responsibilities. I took a crappy sales job and I needed extra money. And when I was like 22, I almost went and was a trivia host at that time. I had the paperwork in hand, and then life really hit me fast and took me in a whole different direction. And so I needed extra money. I was done at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, so my evenings were free. And so I started in entertainment. And I don't even think I realized that at the time. I'm doing this thing for extra money. I look back now, I started performing in entertainment, in live entertainment. I started hosting events. And from there, it just built and built. And then it was, every week people asking me, they'd hear my voice and they'd say, do you do sports? Do you do, are you work for the Daytona Tortugas? You work for, or they were the Daytona Cubs at the time. And I was like, no. And finally I went, literally every week somebody else asked me this. The world is trying to tell me what I am supposed to do. I'm ignoring everything that's speaking to me. And I finally I literally wrote it down in the summer of 2017 with my wife, sitting here in this room that I'm in right now. We were sitting down, we were just writing down goals that we had, personally for each of us, professionally, as a couple, as things that we wanted to get done in our house. And we literally wrote them down, because, you write things down, it's tangible. But we wrote them down, and then I threw the notebook off to the side and never saw it again, or at least so I thought. And one of the things I wrote down, and I have it, you can't see it, but I have it hanging on my wall in here now. I framed it, is it says, become a voiceover actor / announcer. And within 6 months of writing that down, I started doing it. That's when I started at Go Wrestle. And right from there, I picked up arena football as an in-arena host, which I didn't know that was a job. That found me too. And so as soon as I started kind of answering my calling, answering the world that was trying to speak to me since I was in high school, like I can go back that far and talk about things I did and little things where people were like, you're really good at this talking. And I didn't know that that was a skill that you could use. So what I would tell him is just pay attention, dude. Like, the world is trying to tell you where to go and what to do. Listen. And maybe I wouldn't tell him anything, because I'm happy with where I am and how I got here. But if I were to tell someone else, I would tell them, pay attention. If enough people are telling you something about yourself, if you have that little inkling that you should be doing something, don't ignore it. Go and see what's there, because my God, you will be amazed with what you can find.
Now, out of 3 things, your personality, your voice, or your choice of clothing, which of the 3 do you think is the most important to your success?
Probably the clothing, because, and that's weird, right? Because that's the one thing that, like, anyone can control. But I will say that I didn't start with having all the really colorful clothing, but as soon as I upgraded my wardrobe, my calendar got a lot more full. I was always this guy. I always sounded like this. The skills have improved, but like I was always pretty solid on that side of it. But as soon as I started dressing it up, as soon as I started adding a little panache to it, it changed immediately. And a lot of like wrestling announcers, I got dogged by people, or I'd see snide remarks online from, and I know who they're talking about. And people like, oh, you shouldn't do that. And that takes away from this. And you're putting too much shine on yourself. Like, that is the opposite advice that I would give anyone at this point. And I think based on pretty good data too. But as soon as I started upping my wardrobe and just kind of looking more like I'm a part of a show and like in a meaningful, interesting way to entertain our fans, which that was always what it was about. Soon as that happened, the dates started pouring in, the opportunities started pouring in. Like within a month, things started to kind of really start shaking out the way that they have now. I mean, I've just my 5-year calendar that I have is about full. I need to get a new one for the next 5 years. I'm going to get another one because I like that idea of having something that has all 5 years. You can see as soon as I hit February of 2019, because that's where you and I said it wouldn't have been 19. As soon as I hit February 2019, it was like somebody strapped a rocket to me, and I was doing about 200 events a year, which is an insane grind, especially because I was working full time and I've got a family. But like, it was the outfit change that I think was the catalyst for all that.
Well, my wife is in here. Cherry Bombs is in here, and she says, "I love your style."
Well, thank you.
It's funny because even when I saw you at Mayhem on Mills, you were there with your family, and everybody's dressed like they were going to an outdoor wrestling show, but you were wearing the brightest purple shirt.
Oh yeah,
to make sure that like in this sea of people, you can see that one purple shirt standing out.
Well,
is that everywhere? Is that? I know you're going to a wrestling show. It's everywhere now. Okay,
it is because I know I'm that guy now, and that's kind of the It's live the gimmick, brother.
So when you go to the grocery store, you're wearing that shirt like that?
Sometimes. I mean, now that I'm working from home a little more, I'm a little more dressed down, especially if I don't want to get recognized. That's a big thing, especially because I taught in this town, and now like all the kids that I taught, they want to talk to me, and I'm not always about that life, so I really try to have a hat and kind of like lay low.
Okay, so you could do the paparazzi, you could do the paparazzi outfit, right?
But for almost anything else, like if I'm going somewhere, I'm gonna stand out, because standing out is the way to go. That's how you stir up conversations. You never know who you're going to talk to. You never know what it's going to lead to. You never know who knows somebody else. So yeah, it's not just the suits at the shows. It's the shirts. Even like this is like only a few people even have this Bananas jersey. Like it's a crazy, wacky one that you can't get. So like it's all very intentional.
Now I know a lot since I've known you. You're kind of like I guess, caricature has always been like a Funko Pop version of yourself as far as like the figure. Have you ever thought, they do the custom Funko Pops now. Have you ever thought about getting one, or are you waiting for Funko to actually make a Funko of the young professor?
Oh, how cool would that be?
I think, right? They got to catch on to the
I think
Bananas.
Like a few weeks ago, I did at least like mock one up, and I was like, I don't know because I don't know if I love like the mold. Like they have the outfit, they have like, I'm like, it's almost what I want, but I don't know. I might get a good custom job. If you notice, like it's the body that they put my head on is the Mean Gene Okerlund pop. So it's Mean Gene with the microphone. So it's that exact pose and that rendering within my head with the glasses and stuff on it.
Okay, so yeah, it doesn't come off as totally unique. Yeah.
Well, now my big thing is this like big action, almost like when The Rock would like do smell what The Rock is cooking. That's like my big pose when I do this big thing at the beginning of games, which I don't know if you've seen clips of that where they
I have seen you come out, yeah,
and then they do the drone shot where they zoom up out of the stadium and you could see like all like
the sea of
15,000 people in the mountains in the background and stuff. Like, so like that whole like this is banana ball pose, I think I'd want like something cool like that at this point.
Yeah, there's no need for like nothing you do is generic. So why have something generic?
I'd have to wait. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually looking into tickets for the February Banana Ball, and there actually says that there's a wait list or a lottery or something for those
So
tickets,
yeah,
right?
so and if people are listening wondering about that, like you only have like another week and a half to even get on the lottery, which
Lottery.
is the only way you have a chance to get tickets because gosh, so we did our draft. We do a live draft, which it's a tour announcement, but we run it like the NFL draft where we draft different cities that we're going to be going to. And within the weekend, over the weekend, we had 2.2 million people sign up on that lottery system. Like we're playing in front of over 1 million fans this coming year, which is a wild number. This past year, we did over 500,000 people, which again, as somebody that started in places where I was performing sometimes literally in front of 5 people, and I'm not kidding, 5 people some nights, to be performing in front of over 1 million people next year is nuts. So like the tickets don't go on sale until closer to the events, but the only way to kind of ensure any kind of fairness is this lottery system. So even the lottery closes in early December, and then based on what we have available, people will get chosen and then they could buy some tickets. But it is the hottest ticket in all of sports right now. I think it's like Taylor Swift tickets, Bananas tickets. We're kind of right there for how difficult it is to get in.
I was going to say, if you put, you guys are doing wonderful things, but gosh, if you put yourself above Taylor Swift, I mean, it's going to be
above, but like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't, you have to put it just below.
Our system crashes too when tickets go on sale, so there's a comparison. It's
until you guys are being talked about every day on Good Morning America,
right,
you're not going to
right.
reach it. The Swiftie Nation out there. Now, is it difficult? I know you being a family man, you have 4 kids, your wife, and then you're traveling now. Is that difficult for you?
Oh yeah, dude. It was hard this year. This year in particular was really tough because I was literally still teaching and just taking off all the time. I literally rolled the dice. I mean, I went all in on this. I used all my PTO and then I used unpaid time just to make this happen. And we were traveling every single week. I mean, I said I did 86 of the 87 games, and even that one I missed, I was working that weekend. That was River City Wrestling Con that weekend, so I didn't have an off day. So yeah, it was really challenging because and our games were kind of all over the place in terms of like days of the week. There'd be Tuesdays, there'd be Mondays, there'd be Sundays, there'd be Wednesdays. This year is going to be a little bit easier because like we learned, we do, and then we learn is kind of the way we learn as we go. We're not going to sit and like, well, wait, let's think about everything before we go. That's what's cool about our organization is we learn as we go. One of the things we're doing this year, you mentioned it earlier, all of our games are either Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, everything this entire year. And it's because people were on the road so much and it's a little harder on families. And so we're trying to like take care of our people, our organization first, because if they're good, then we can really put on the best show for our fans. So hopefully this year will be a little bit better. And now that I'm full-time and I can work primarily remote as the cast director, I'm home more now in the last month and a half than I have been in 7 or 8 years, period. I take my kids to school every day. I'm picking them up. Like, my wife's coming home exhausted from teaching. Like, I'm like, I got it. I'll go do this. I can kind of do a lot of my stuff on the run and on the go. So this year will be a lot easier, I think. But man, this past year, yeah, if you saw what my days looked like and then travel days and the skill, it was not for the faint of heart.
Although I find it kind of crazy that a traveling job actually gives you more time at home.
Well, I mean, because so much of my office work can be done remote, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I can be home. And so that's 3 like solid days where I can, even if they're working or they're at school, like there's things I can be doing too that kind of help contribute in ways that I couldn't before. So yeah, it's weird that it's kind of freeing me up a little bit more.
Wow. Well, are you going to be back at River City Wrestling Con this year, or is it too early to know?
I had to tell Nick that unfortunately not. And I looked at it because I was like, well, let's see when it shakes out with our schedule and let's find out, because if it's something where like maybe it's a city I've been to or it's not one of our bigger games, then I'll do River City, because that's what I did this past year. We were in Savannah And I literally, we had a game in Savannah. I did Thursday game in Savannah, Friday game in Savannah, drove right from there to Jacksonville, missed the Saturday game in Savannah. So did 2 days of River City and then went back to Savannah for another game on Monday. That was this year. You would talk about crazy. That's a crazy schedule. This year, June 8th, I think, is the weekend.
Yeah, I think it's the second week of June, I think it is. Or
you
first
know where
week of
we're
June,
going to be on June 8th? Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah.
I will be literally playing at one of the most revered venues in all of sports, the biggest place in my entire career. So unfortunately, I will be missing River City Wrestling Con this year.
Yeah, it's awesome when things just line up so perfectly, or as perfect as can be, like Savannah and Jacksonville. That's not too far to make that sacrifice.
Yeah,
because this year I think it's actually in Daytona this year, if I'm not mistaken.
St. Augustine, which is
St. Augustine, yes, close
which
enough.
Is a little closer to me than Jacksonville. I'm 30 minutes from St. Augustine, but I'm at Fenway Park.
You're at Fenway Park.
I don't think a single person is going to be upset with me for.
No, we would probably be upset with you if you didn't go to Fenway Park.
What are you doing? You interviewed that guy. Go.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, Matt, is there anything else that we should know before I let you get back to your family and everything else that you have to get on with?
Well, if you're somebody that's tuning in and you're a pro wrestling fan and you're looking for stuff to do coming up, the Establishment Wrestling is coming up. It is going to be, I think doors are at 3:30. I think we start 4:30. I probably should have studied that flyer a little more before this show tonight, but it is this Sunday. It is in Orlando. It's got a lot of the best talents in indie wrestling and a lot of my friends who I love performing with. And I'm excited to get back into a ring and give them the grand entrances that they deserve. And if I'm there and I'm a part of the greatest show in sports, you can best believe I'm bringing my A game to make sure that this is a world-class presentation, and we're going to have a lot of fun this Sunday. So I hope to see some wrestling fans out, because it's been a while, man. It's been since the last River City where I've gotten to really kind of do anything wrestling. So be probably my last one for the year and maybe for a while. So I hope people come out. I'll have some fun.
It's like when you don't get to do something that you love for such a long time. I think the energy level, the excitement just gets a little bit higher than it normally would be if it was a week-to-week basis. Although you bring the energy on a week-to-week basis to begin with.
Yeah, but I'm gonna leave it all out there. It's I don't get to do it that often, and I love stepping between those ropes and just filling people's eardrums, because that's what it's all about.
Well, you do a great job, my friend, and it's so good to see you doing just great things. And whether I was watching you in the ring or listen to your commentary or now seeing you do crazy stuff in the wacky world that is Banana Ball, it's great to see people, like I tell the wrestlers all the time too, the ones I get to see, that have elevated themselves to another level. It's so cool to see them like really take that ball and run with it. I actually had Luke Curtis on the channel about 2 months ago, and
Love that
first guy. He's amazing. Yeah, I've had him on 3 times, and I told him, from that first FEW show where you guys were at calling, it was like right when the pandemic we thought was over, but it wasn't over.
Man.
Man. I remember
what a time to be alive that one.
Oh, craziness. I remember my mom actually like getting mad at me because we weren't wearing masks in the interviews and we were standing too close to one another, and it was like
weird time in life.
It was like October 2020. We thought it was all over.
Florida was over it.
It was over. We're done. We're open for business. But I actually remember you talked about star power, and I remember Luke and Layla. I didn't interview them at that because it was their first shows, but I remember seeing it. And I was like, okay, there's something here with those two. And I remember they were the only two I actually reached out to after that event. Other than the Culture Incs and some of the guys that I've kept up with.
But they were all more established,
Right. They had.
Luke's gimmick was Florida blue, and he was just a kind of a cowboy with blue hair, and that was
the outlaw.
I bet he doesn't talk about that in the interviews. He probably wants to erase that from everyone's memory.
I told him I get to bring it up because I actually have an interview with him with the blue hair at River City Wrestling Con. I'm like, I can bring that up because I have an interview with the blue. But no, it's great to see, and that's what I try to do here on Tone Entertainment, is like really see the people that have that star power, that it factor, and see them do something bigger and better. And I'm so glad, you're such a great guy. You've always been very welcoming of us and whatever we wanted to do at the shows or just even if we weren't interviewing you or just talking, you've been nothing but kind and good to us. So it's definitely, I love seeing people like do big things. And I'm great to see you doing something that's just so awesome out there.
Well, Tony, thank you, buddy. And thanks for always being in my corner. Thanks for sponsoring my show years ago. It's always good to see you and talk to you. You're one of the good guys. So thanks a lot, man.
Absolutely. Matt, where can people look you up at?
You can find me across all platforms at Young Professor G, and keep your eyes peeled for the Savannah Bananas all next year, and my book, which should be out towards the middles, especially if you're an aspiring announcer, talker, guy or gal. There is no coursework, there's no training, there's no focused education for what we do, and I am looking to completely change that. I don't think I have all the answers, but I am not afraid to get the conversation started and help others to elevate their games, and let's make good events everywhere for everybody. That's the goal.
I love that. I wish I would have had your book. I'm sure it's going to be, I haven't read it, but I'm sure it's going to be great. But I was watching our first interview and I'm just like, hey guys, we're here on Toned In Entertainment. I'm here at Ignite Wrestling with the Young Professor. And I'm like waving my arms up and down like, oh my God. I'm like, I needed
you all got to start somewhere, man.
Yes.
You got to start somewhere.
It was hilarious. It's like some of those I can hardly watch anymore because it's just, I'm like, I can't make reels out of these videos. I can't. I can't
sure
do
it. Sure you can.
I should. But anyways, Matt, it was great catching up with you. Guys, if you haven't gone out to see the Savannah Bananas, I haven't gone out, but
get on the lottery.
I need to get in the lottery.
Get on it. You only have like 2 weeks to get on. Otherwise, you'll be watching next year going,
I should have gone. Because it's only going to get crazier. I think it's going to be one of those things. I think that, it's caught on with obviously the hardcore fan base, right? But I think it's going to be one of those things that eventually just catches on a little bit more and a little bit more.
We're playing 6 major league stadiums next year. Right. You're talking 35,000 plus each night that we do that. That's unheard of. That's unbelievable. So yeah, we've got eyes and plans on places even bigger than that. So yeah, get in on the ground floor while you can, folks.
All right. Well, fantastic. Well, guys, if you like interview podcasts like this with the Young Professor, guys, make sure you hit that red subscribe button so you can stay tuned in here to Toned In Entertainment for future videos. Subscribe to the channel. Do it. Go now. Do it now.